Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Saturday upgrade and commander build video, which is going to be on the Tier 7 French destroyer on the standard line, not the new line that's currently in early release as of recording of this video. The Tier 7 French destroyer being the Vauquelin. That's how you pronounce it. Apparently on YouTube, there's several ways to pronounce this word according to various YouTube sources, so I tried. So I think it's the Vauquelin. We'll go with that one. I don't know. Anyhow, we're going to look at the commander, we'll look at modules, upgrades, armor, and the playstyle of this ship. So we need to first talk about what type of destroyer is the Vauquelin. There's three types of destroyers in World of Warships. You have torpedo destroyers, hybrid destroyers, and gunboat destroyers. And Vauquelin is a gunboat destroyer. Yes, she has 9 torpedoes. They're relatively short-ranged. I say short-range, 8 kilometer, not like Russian 4 kilometers or something like that. They're okay-ish ranged. But really it's about the guns and her speed and utilizing her the French damage saturation mechanics that the French destroyers get. So when we're talking about the guns, these are essentially 539 millimeter guns. So we'll look a little bit more into, of course, those certain specifications. But she's a gunboat destroyer and plays really handily for several reasons. Now, in terms of her armor, it's pretty standard. It's just 16 millimeter and 10 millimeter under superstructure, typical for your Tier 7 destroyers here in the game. And here's just giving an idea of the torpedo layout. So you have a set that can fire starboard and port side, and then a set that can fire either way. So you'll always have, depending if you haven't launched all 6 torpedoes off one side, you'll have a set that you can use 6 on one side and just 3 on the other. All right, so let's go ahead and start getting into the details with the ship modules. Now, there's no upgrades for your main battery. And this is a commander. I've already moved the commander off to the Tier 8 French destroyer because I'm grinding up the line for Colbert. I'm about to finish grinding normal surface ships here in the game. But I'll go ahead and show you some things of what I was building and how I was equipping this ship. So reload time is 5 seconds, standard. You can get that down, of course, in several ways. 180 degree turn time is 18 seconds. So this is something you're probably going to be looking at, taking the grease the gears to help your turret traverse time. And then maximum HE shell damage 2000, maximum AP shell damage 2600. In terms of her hull, hull A, you can see there's definitely a hit there in terms of the survivability. You lose 3000 hit points, you lose several additional AA mounts. Your torpedoes also take a minor hit. And then your maneuverability also is lost within the hull A, or I should be flipping that around to say you get a lot more better things in doing the hull B. So when you're grinding up any line, typically you're always going to want to grab the hull first, just to give you more of that survivability. So having 18,100 hit points, I think this ship is among the top 5 of Tier 7 destroyers with a large health pool, in addition to the damage saturation, which I talked a little bit about that yesterday's Friday highlight video. I'll tag it at the end of this one if you want to see me talk a little bit more about that mechanic that other destroyers in the game don't get. So definitely do the hull first. Your torpedoes are a 180 degree turn time of 6 seconds. Excuse me, I winced my eyes. Torpedo tube reload time is 90 seconds. You can get that down if you would like. Torpedo range 8 kilometers, maximum damage 14,833, speed of 68 knots, and detectability range of 1.4 kilometers. Now your stock gunfire control system is 11.9 kilometers, which is okay for Tier 7. Once you start seeing Tier 8s, Tier 9s, then you're going to definitely want a little more of that range, which you get with the upgraded gunfire control system, giving you 13 kilometers of range. And this is pretty nice. I didn't really find myself desiring more range. We can talk about that with the commander build here at Tier 7 at least, because it's kind of the shell velocity and trying to land in shells like 12, 13 kilometers away can be a little bit tricky. Your propulsion is 36 knots, so little bit of that French speed going on. Of course, we can get that faster with the serial mic flag. So then we're pushing 37.8 knots. And you have the, for that French engine boost, so that plus 20%. So you'll be going easily over 40 knots here on this Vauquelin. Now, in terms of your upgrades, you have 4 slots as a whole. I take the main armaments mod 1 to reduce the risk of my main battery and torpedo tubes becoming incapacitated by -20%, improving their survivability by plus 50%, and reducing the repair time if either of those should be temporarily incapacitated. If you remember, I was kind of purposely showing you the torpedoes, and they're rather exposed. So it's quite frequent that it's likely for you to have your torpedoes incapacitated. So that is a reason why I like taking that for them, especially if you're running up on a target with your speed and you want to, YOLO a target. Your guns, you have 2 on the front and then you have 3 here on the rear. So vulnerable, but it's not like you have this massive superstructure. It's actually kind of small, just in these like little compartments throughout here. With that being said, I just prefer the main armaments mod 1 here. You wouldn't take either of these 2. You don't need magazine mod 1. If you're playing ranked randoms clan battles, you just take the Juliet Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. And we wouldn't bother with the damage control party mod 1 because it's literally just a 5-second action time. In the second slot, in terms of a standard upgrade, I would say take the engine room protection. This is going to reduce the risk of your engine becoming incapacitated, your steering gears becoming incapacitated, and improve the repair time on the engine and steering gears if they should become incapacitated. Because, as you may have already noticed, or if you've been playing the line, you do not get smoke. So you are often seen. So anything you can do to keep your maneuverability and your speed intact, try to prevent either the engine or steering gears becoming incapacitated, is really important. Now, on the flip side, you could also take the engine boost mod 1. This increases the action time of the engine boost and emergency engine power consumables, action time plus 30%. So basically, it's just going to take your engine boost up to 150 seconds, if I got that correct in my head, in terms of the action time. Now, one of the big things here with the engine boost mod 1, now it might be that you are grinding up the line and you want the Clobert. Then I would say if you already have the coal, buy it and just demount, remount, demount, remount as you go up the line if you want to go ahead and make that investment. I would, if I was going to be playing this destroyer a lot all the time, then I would actually put the engine boost mod 1 because it's the 20%, because it goes all the way, I think you get to 25%. That's like the emergency engine power boost, and then it goes all the way down to 8%. But just getting around the map and closing distance on targets really quickly if you do decide to rush or you're kiting away, I find extremely helpful in playing the French destroyer line. As I've been playing Marceau for a really long time. As you can see, I almost have a million XP on it. Going into the third slot, there's 2 options I guess you could argue for. The one I've done is the aiming systems mod 1. This is improving your maximum main battery shell dispersion by reducing it horizontally and vertically by -7%. So essentially your horizontal and vertical dispersion gets reduced, so your salvos are a little more accurate here on the destroyer. Then you get a slight buff on your torpedo tubes, and then there's the secondary battery firing range, but you're mainly taking it for the maximum main battery shell dispersion being improved and landing your shots more accurately. Now, because of how bad the turret traverse time is, which we haven't talked about the commander yet and putting on grease the gears, you may also want to consider the main battery mod 2, improving your main battery traverse speed by plus 15%, because you don't want slow turrets when you're getting into gunfights with other enemy destroyers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that on the commander build. So you could do either. You could test them both out and see what you like, and of course I'll have this aiming systems mod 1, the before and after on the right side of the screen if I've not done that already. The fourth slot, I recommend the propulsion mod 1. This reduces your time to full speed, time taken to reach full engine power when accelerating, -50%. So this really helps because of you being a gunboat destroyer. You open gunboating, you're not sitting in a smoke screen unless you use a teammates or divmates or something like that. You're going to be using your WASD hacks as much as possible, especially when accelerating and slowing down to help mitigate the damage you take by completely avoiding salvos. This one just generally does better and taking less damage over the steering gears mod 1 because you can actually fully accelerate out of a salvo, where this is just, making your ship more maneuverable. But these would be the two I would look at, but I am a firm believer in the propulsion mod 1, especially on French destroyers when you have this 20% engine boost. It's kind of a no-brainer, in my opinion. Armament-wise, we have the high explosive shells. So again, these are 5-second reload time. They're 139mm, maximum damage of 2,000, chances of causing fire on target 9%. We can bump that up with these two combat signals here to 10%, being the India X-ray and the Victor Lima. You penetrate 23mm, so when you are going up against more tier 8s and tier 9s, there's going to begin to be certain cruisers and battleships that you're, of course, just not going to penetrate. The most of them, it's really going to be focusing on trying to get fires started and aiming at their superstructure. So just be mindful of that. Your initial velocity with the high explosive shells is kind of slow-ish. It's 700 meters a second. So it can make it a little more difficult when landing salvos. If you're, firing on an enemy ship that's even like a battleship that's not moving very fast, per se, at 13 kilometers away, just because it takes time, and then maybe you're moving very fast yourself with your engine boost. So just be mindful of that. Now, the armor piercing, as I talked about yesterday, you don't want to sleep on this, because these armor piercing shells are really good. With these being 139mm guns, you can Citadel tier 5, tier 6, tier 7, and tier 8 cruisers, depending on how close you get to them, or if it's a really light cruiser like tier 9 Neptune. But I like taking the ship in ops too, because you get a lot of maybe Aobas, Omahas. There's a good number of cruisers in operations. So definitely utilize armor piercing whenever you get broadside targets. And this also is really impactful to use when you're dealing with battleships. If you can't pin their bow or stern, then you switch to the armor piercing and use when you're like quote-unquote broadside to them or something. And then you'll penetrate and punch through, and you'll actually get pretty decent damage in full pins, right? Because these do 2,600 maximum damage. Still the 700 meters a second there as well. Torpedoes, a reload time in 90 seconds, 8-kilometer range, almost 15,000 maximum damage. Torpedo speed 68 knots. Detectability range 1.4 kilometers. All in all, rather decent. When you get your concealment, I gotta remember what concealment is. It's 6.6. You have a 1.4 kilometer gap in getting these torpedoes off. Otherwise, if you don't take concealment, like right now, you'd be a 0.7 kilometer gap between your torpedoes fired in your concealment range. So typically, you're trying to torpedo ships that are pushing into you, like cruisers or battleships. Or you might be utilizing them where you are rushing a target from behind an island or out of a smoke screen or something like that, and getting these 9 torpedoes as a whole. Depth charges, you get 2 charges, 10 bombs in a charge, so that means you get 20 depth charges, so nice. Maximum damage 3,400, reload time of 40 seconds. I didn't run into too many submarines, so I've been playing this when I played it in randoms. I think 1 or 2. But it is helpful to utilize, of course, ASW when the situation is possible to do so, and you won't get blapped for rushing a submarine, right? Consumables, damage control party, pretty standard for destroyer, 5-second action time, cooldown time, 40 seconds. Now, here's the fun thing with these French destroyers, is getting the main battery reload booster. So this is a negative 50%. Main battery reload time, meaning right now, we go from a 5-second to a 2.5 second reload time for 15 seconds. So this ship has very strong AP DPM and high explosive DPM at tier 7. And then when you're using your main battery reload booster, it's actually quite even closer for those 15 seconds, closer to Akazuki, the tier 8 Japanese gunboat. So this is really helpful, particularly in gun engagements with enemy destroyers. And if a battleship has, let's say, maybe he's used his DCP or he's fired his guns and then you want to open up on him and just put a lot of damage into him in a short amount of time, then that's when you utilize the main battery reload booster. Has a cooldown time of 100 seconds, and you get 4 of these without taking Superintendent. Really good though. It really adds to the line. If they didn't have the main battery reload booster on this, I would say this ship would just kind of more meh, like kind of meh. It's okay, but with it, it's like no. I think the ship's it's good. Like it's a solid good. Your engine boost, again, this is the French engine boost plus 20%, action time 120 seconds. You can get that out closer to 150 seconds with the engine boost mod here in the second slot. And I didn't even tell you guys, this costs 17,000 coal. With coupon, I think it's 12,750. So again, if you're wanting this and you like playing the ship a lot, then definitely pick it up. Otherwise, if you're planning to use this, but maybe on Corsair, then you can just buy it, mount it and demount it, mount it and demount it as you go up the line and reaching the tier 10. So you get 3 of these as a whole. We could get 4 with Superintendents. Otherwise, with the additional combat signals, what would I be running here? Well, I am a cheeky little destroyer player. I always take these, most always on my destroyers, because it's really funny when these engagements happen. I think I just played a game where I had a destroyer. I dodged all his torps and he decided to ram me. But I had the Hotel Yankee, so I got the Die Hard achievement. So I do like running that, and especially when you're in this destroyer, if you're using your speed and those shorter per se range torpedoes on a target, you use all your 9 torpedoes, and then it's like, well, now it's time to give them the big torpedo, right? So I'll just mention that there. Then I like taking the November Foxtrot. This is going to get your consumables back off cooldown a little more quickly. So 38, 95, and 114. Otherwise, I mean, you could also take the Juliet Whiskey Uno 1. This is going to increase your chances of causing flooding. For some reason, I just just tend to save them. And I really wouldn't run any other combat signals. I mean, one of the things that's very, very terrible about this destroyer is your AA. So I'm not even consider the November Echo Set 7. Because your AA, your rating is 27. Tier 6 CVs will crap on you, and Tier 8 CVs will crap on you. There's a lot of crapping that happens when a CV decides to focus you, because your range is only 3 kilometers, and your tier's damage is 74. Yeah, so we don't even touch that. In terms of the commander, well, let me just show you real quick in yesterday's video what I was running and talk about these seasoned commanders. There's 2 of these seasoned commanders that just have different first names that have enhanced skills. Grease the Gears, it's an enhanced, it's plus 20% rather than plus 15%, and an enhanced Adrenaline Rush where it's negative 0.20% versus negative 0.25%. So I liked using this commander a lot. So getting the plus 20% versus just plus 15%, which would be now, is a reason why I went ahead and I went without the main battery mod 2 and running that seasoned commander. With running the seasoned commander and taking Aiming Systems mod 1 and not the main battery mod 2. Now, again, it might drive you nuts not to have that. I'm losing my words right now. It might drive you nuts not to have the main battery mod 2, and of course, definitely test it out and play it if you don't like that turret traverse speed. But with the on-row commanders, there's 2 of them. I like taking the Grease the Gears, of course, and the Adrenaline Rush for the French Destroyer line and how I build them, as I just find it really helpful. So I think one is for 35,000 coal, and one is for 1,500 doubloons. So we'll just go ahead and check that real quick here in the armory. So I have some coffee. Yep. Well, there's one of them. So there's one for the 1500 doubloons. And unless I'm blind, I'm guessing I got the other through some type of deal here in the game. So I've got two of them. Let's see, the other one is Charles Henry Enroe, then yeah, the Jean-Jacques Enroe. So utilize those for sure if you're able to. I'm not going to talk about the unique commander. I'll do that more on Morgador and Kleber. But for now, let's go ahead and get into what would I recommend building here on the French Vauquelin. So probably what I'm going to say first is your bread and butter build. Your preventive maintenance, risk of modules becoming incapacitated, negative 30%. And then you get a slight buff on your secondary in AA mount survivability. Not that that matters so much here, but having preventive maintenance is really good. Now, if you don't care for that, you could avoid that entirely starting off, but I would recommend you not. Again, because of your guns more exposed and your torpedoes being more exposed as well. For 3-point commander, Last Stand is a definite must for the French destroyer lines. Again, you don't have smokescreen where you can just hide and conceal yourself. You're going to be exposed a lot. So you want this skill. So if your engine or steering gears become incapacitated, your ship can remain partially able to sustain speed and maneuverability. If let's say your damage control party is down and you can't repair your engine or your steering gears. And then as we talked about this ship having a lot of hit points, well, now we put survivability expert on, and now you're over 20,500 hit points. So it's really important to run this, especially with the French damage saturation, that you don't take as much damage once your certain parts of your ship have become so damage saturated. You take less damage compared to all the other destroyers in the game. So important to run here. I like running the Consumer Expert here at Tier 7 because it just allows you to run up more on those Tier 5s, Tier 6, and Tier 7 destroyers that you find yourself in when you are top tier or same tier. And then also not to be as put out, so to speak, if you run into Tier 8 and Tier 9 destroyers, because it's going to drop you from that 7.3 to 6.6. And detectability range by air drops you from 3.5 to 3.2. And again, this is what I was running in the video yesterday, and I quite like this. After that, then this is probably, I'd say, 11-point commander. Go ahead and take Grease the Gears. It's just going to be very helpful for you. So you can see here we're going to drop down from that, was it 18 seconds to 15.7. So with the other commander I had on the other day, it was probably about 15 seconds exact, roughly. And having the seasoned commander with his enhanced Grease the Gears. So something, again, to consider there. It's going to be up to you. So if you go with it just like this without taking the... I just got to finalize this point. If you don't take the main battery mod 2, then what you have to do if in doing a build like this, you just have to think in advance of how you're turning your turrets in time before maybe you're going to be stepping onto a capture zone. There's an enemy destroyer nearby, and like, hey, how do I want to engage him and disengage? So then turn your turrets to starboard or port, whatever works best for you. So just be mindful of that, is the only thing I would say there. After that 11-point build, I'd go ahead and pick up the Adrenaline Rush. This makes you a 14-point build. So as you lose each 1% of your hit point, your main battery is going to reload faster, your torpedoes are going to reload faster, so on and so forth. So right now, we're still at 5 seconds, so then you can drop down to 4.9, 4.8, 4.7, 4.6, 4.5, essentially depending on how many hit points you've lost. And then this skill ties in really well with the main battery and AA specialist. Now, not for the AA skills, but for your main battery reload time. So when you're looking here, it'll drop you down to 4.8 seconds. It's kind of weird because it was just said it was 5 seconds, but it must be like 5.09 or something like that. because it says it shaves off negative 0.3 seconds, but that just brings us down to 4.8. So they must be rounding it up. So 4.8 second reload time, and then again tying with the adrenaline rush, then you can begin to see 4.7, 4.6, 4.5, 4.4, 4.3. So those two skills just really work well in tandem together. So I would recommend building into those two here on the Vauquelin. Then after that, let's see, we all right, 14 points. Then we could talk about doing Fearless Brawler. I said 14 points. Now we're at 21. We were at 17 points, excuse me. But for 21-point commander, I could see taking Fearless Brawler. Now the permanent effect you get is the number of shell explosions in A salvo is +1, but it's your main battery reload time is reduced by negative 10%. Excuse me. I was just thinking of doing the math on my phone. Apparently, I'm a little tired in doing this video. My apologies. But so that 4.8, right? And if I go to times 0.9, then it's a 4.32 second reload time. So then with Adrenaline Rush, you can get down to a 4-second reload time as an example. Again, because this skill can be activated, it reduces your main battery reload time while your ship remains detected by an enemy, which is going to be pretty much any time you shoot your guns, unless you're using smoke or you're firing from behind an island or something, you're concealed, you're dark while firing your main battery guns. Otherwise, you're always going to get a use out of the Fearless Brawler. What the gunboat lines teach you is that you want to be firing they get their damage from firing their guns. You're not trying to stealthily sail around the map, maybe more as a hybrid destroyer, but especially not as a torpedo destroyer, right? You want to be using your guns. You want to be regularly engaging the enemy. Maybe you take a brief pause, you go dark, you re-engage. So the Fearless Brawler skill is really valuable. And at tier 7, whether you're seeing 6s, 5s, other 7s, or 8s or 9s, this is what I would end up building into on my tier 7 French destroyer. And this would even probably make a decent build for the Clipper. However, as we go up to the tier 8, 9, and 10, I'm probably going to be talking about some other possibilities, which would be, particularly with the main battery and AA Expert. I'm not too hip to recommend this on the Vauquelin. What this does is it increases your main battery firing range by +20% and damage from AA shell explosions at +15%. All right, there's two things. If I look at it in a pro sense, right, a positive light, it takes you from 13 to 15.7 kilometer range, which is like silly, almost at tier 7 in a sense of like, you're having the gun range that cruisers have at tier 7 and tier 6, right? Even some that are at tier 8 only get to 15.7, 15.8, and I think maybe even in some of the 9s as well, right? And the reason, so this is in a positive light, it would be fun to harass battleships and cruisers if you are able to land your shells. The reason why I'm not hip on recommending it on the ship is, again, it's that shell velocity we talked about, 700 meters a second. I find it slightly difficult to land shells at 12.5, 13 kilometers away when I don't have that same shell velocity. That I believe improves once you get up to the Lian task, which I think goes up to over 800. Yeah, 840 meters a second. So I can't readily recommend if you're going to be investing and playing a lot into the Vauquelin for you to be, and you want your own designated commander for this ship. I can't really recommend the main battery AA Expert because it's just, you're going to struggle landing your shells at 15 kilometers away, in my opinion. Unless you're just super pro, right? So then it's okay, so then let's invest into our guns within that 13 kilometer gun range and get the most out of them. So that's kind of how I lean, how I favor in this situation. Alternatives, I'll just talk about two other skills here. One could be the Superintendent. This would give you 4 engine boost. It would give you 5 main battery reload boosters. I haven't really... I'll probably change once I start playing the tier 8 French GDs and up. I haven't really been I really wish I had that 5th main battery reload booster. I wish I really had that 4th engine boost, because I feel like at tier 7, it depends. If you're bottom tier and seeing tier 9s, maybe the matches last a little longer, but at tier 7, the matches just don't seem to last long enough that you're regularly going to have a 4th engine boost. Now, maybe with the main battery load booster, that could be. So if you did run to take Superintendent, then I would say do this, because then you take Incoming Fire Alert with your 1 skill point left, and you get a warning about a salvo fired at your ship from a distance of more than 4.5 kilometers. On the other hand, you have Fill the Tubes. This would reduce your torpedo tube reload time by -10%. So then you drop down from 90 seconds to 81 seconds on your torpedo tube reload time. And honestly, if you used some of my games yesterday, we weren't getting a lot of torpedo hits. It was a lot of work with the main battery guns, because by the time you try to get close enough and set yourself up for the torpedoes, then I can kind of find that enemy ship might be closer to dead. If your enemy team's focusing firing him right. And it's just a lot of work because of that small gap between your concealment and your maximum torpedo range. So I feel like it's a little much too bit of a distraction. If you want to play the hybrid destroyers, play the American destroyer line, play the British destroyer line. But if you want to play something for the guns, right, then I'd be like, do this. So this would be my #1 recommendation on the Vauquelin here at tier 7. And so we've got 3 point, so I'm just gonna go ahead and master those 2 at least. But that's gonna bring us to a close. So I hope you liked today's video. If you have questions on something I didn't cover, let me know in the comments below. But regardless, if you did like today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I appreciate it. And thank you to my Patreon supporters. And until next time, take care.